Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Emily Hurst Pritchett, who is an artist, illustrator. And for readers unfamiliar with your work, how would you describe what it is that you do?
I do a painting for book covers in a fairly realistic style and with a lot of bright colors. That's one of my favorite things to use, a lot of bright colors and interesting lighting. And I've
Okay.
done a lot of middle grade covers and then a little bit more variation in my personal work, um, and then also some children's books. So.
Wonderful. Okay. So, what draws you to the particular genre of children's books or style that you create?
I think a lot of it is really just the stuff I loved to read when I was growing up. And I've always loved reading. My parents are big readers, and so I was reading sci-fi and fantasy stuff from a pretty young age. And I still love middle grade and young adult books a lot. And so I still read those a lot, even though I'm well into my adulthood now.
A lot of
And
adults do, really.
yeah. Um, And I found that, especially with the bright colors that I like to use in my work, the middle grade fantasy and adventures and children's books as well, fits really well with that style.
Okay. And what do you think draws the readers to these kinds of books?
I think I don't know. I personally love a good coming of age story, and so definitely that's part of it. And I think I don't know. I think there's a chance to be less serious sometimes than adult fiction, and not necessarily. I mean, I think a good story takes itself seriously, no matter what the subject matter is. But I think sometimes there's a chance to be more creative uh, and just like a little weirder with it sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, and also the family friendly aspect is just kind of nice. I have a 10-year-old son, so there are some books that we can read together or read at the same time. And that's very nice. And I also have a 2-year-old, so she can appreciate the children's books, the picture books a lot more. Um, yeah, I like that about it a lot.
Okay, that's good. So can you show, I know that you do artwork other than the books, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you'd like to show us that's not book related?
Sure. Yeah. I'm sorry, I forgot to pull it out. Just a moment.
Is that painting in the background one that won awards at BOSKONE?
This was not because this one wasn't finished yet. Um, and most of the
Oh,
paintings
the
that were
one
at
in the
BOSKONE are,
background?
yeah,
Oh, I see. That's the one you were talking about. Okay.
yeah. So most of the ones that were at BOSKONE are still in the US because it's too much hassle to transport things back and forth that far. So I don't have a lot of books with me at the moment, and a lot of work to show off, but I have some. And a lot of my work that's personal work is still based on favorite books, just ones that I wasn't officially hired for. Um, so here is one. I hope it's not too shiny and you can get a good look at it.
Yep.
Um, this is inspired by uh, Tamora Pierce's Becca Cooper series, which is one of my very favorites. Um,
Hmm.
and so the adventure, and this one is less bright colors than a lot of my work, but it's still pretty colorful and hopefully a fun take on a battle scene. This is one of my
Okay.
favorites, and
Right.
it's a lot of purple, which is my favorite color. I love purple. Um, and I find that all of my paintings tend to come out in the same color scheme, which is golds and either blue or red. And I have to kind of fight against it sometimes, so that they don't all end up exactly the same colors. And this is another favorite that uh, I did show at BOSKONE 2 years ago, and won an award there, and led to me being invited back as the guest artist, which was an unexpected surprise and completely wonderful. So I had such a great time there this year.
Mm.
And this one is actually also inspired by a Tamora Pierce book, one of my favorite authors, uh, a great young adult author that I love, with a lot of girl
Okay,
poweries. Um, so I love her books, and a lot of my stuff ends up being inspired by her.
wonderful. Okay. Now you do a lot of book cover art, and you said you don't have many of the books there with you. Do you
Yeah, I
have
don't have
some
a
of the
ton.
book? Do you have any of the art there with you?
I do have some of the books. A lot of my work I do digitally, so I don't necessarily have like painting to hold up anyway. But I do have some of the book covers also. They're a little easier to grab. Um, Recently I've been working on this series, which I was hired to redo the covers for the first three books in the series in preparation for the fourth book, which just barely came out, like I think 2 weeks ago. And so it was so fun to get to work on the whole series and reimagine the covers working with the author. Um, I have here books one and three because my son, the 10-year-old, is currently reading book two. So
Oh,
good recommendation. We really enjoyed it. Um, and they're a really fun adventure story and were really fun to work on the covers. It's kind of a mix of fantasy adventure, and then some of the books are a little more sci-fi inspired. One of the books, they go back in time, so it's historical. So I get to do a little bit of everything, and it was really fun to work on all of those.
oh, that's wonderful. So, can you explain your process in creating a book cover?
Sure. So usually I will start out with kind of just a brief description of what the author or publisher is looking for. I I've done a lot of work with some publishing houses, but also with independent self-publishing authors. And so depending on that, sometimes I have an art director that I'm working with who's kind of giving me more specific direction about what they want to see. Um, and sometimes I'm just talking directly to the author, and sometimes they'll have specific ideas of what they want for the cover. Sometimes they're just like, take a look at the book, see what you think, give us some ideas of your own. Uh, so I get to do a mix, kind of back and forth. And I'll start off with very small thumbnail sketches, very scribbly rough drafts, at a very small size, usually just an inch or so, and do a lot of those to kind of get some ideas of what I want to work on. Um, and sometimes I get a chance to read through the entire book, like the entire manuscript beforehand and look for ideas. Not always, and sometimes I don't have time, but it's very fun when I get a chance to and like really get an idea of the entire story before I start illustrating. Um, And once I have some of those small sketches, I will send those to director or the author, whoever I'm giving me direction, and see. And then I'll proceed from that to a larger pencil drawing. Um, and I almost always, for books and book covers, work digitally because it's quicker and cleaner, especially when I have young kids running around my house. Um, it's much easier to make changes and adjustments. But I always do my rough draft like underdrawing in pencil because otherwise I can't if I start doing it on the computer screen, I can't get a sense of the proportions and the scale properly. I have to be able to like physically hold it and look at it and look away from it. Um, so I always do that in pencil. And then once I have a pencil drawing that I'm happy with, I'll show that to the author or art director as well. And then I scan it into the computer, and sometimes I will print out a larger version of the drawing and glue it onto a board and then paint on it physically, which is what is happening with this one back here. But usually I'll work on it digitally, and I have a tablet, and I'll paint on it in Photoshop, um, and work on it that way until I get to the level of finish that I want. And then it's the nice thing about Photoshop, it's very easy to like adjust the colors. It's easy to scoot something over or make it a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. So I do use that a lot and fiddle with it until I get it exactly right.
Okay, So what you do is you take the picture, you draw the picture, and then you put it into Photoshop, and then you can do all kinds of things with the colors, and can you change the picture itself when you put it into Photoshop, or do you change it at all? Or do you just
Yeah,
leave
so,
the picture the way it is and then just change it around the colors?
um, it's a little bit different every time, honestly. Um,
Oh, okay.
so usually what I'll do is I can show you an example. I don't know if this will show up the contrast well at all.
Yeah.
Um, I have like a 9 by 12 notebook that I will do the pencil drawing in, scan it into Photoshop, and then I will paint or draw layers of colors kind of over it and under it to replicate a real painting with textures and different brushes. And I will I'll definitely like move different elements around. You can kind of I'll select and like make it a little bit bigger, like, oh, I think this figure should be a little bit smaller. I want to change this
All
background
right.
thing and scoot it over a little bit. I'll definitely do a lot of that. And then paint over it with start out with transparent layers kind of layered on top of the drawing to get a painty effect, and then go over the top of it with more solid colors. And then I'll change the colors a little bit here and there as I go along, adjusting for like, oh, I want this a little more yellow, I want this a little brighter. And then even after the final painting is finished, I'll be adjusting it a little bit and like brighten this corner a little bit to draw more attention in this spot, make the edges a little darker and focus the attention on the center. Um, so this cover right here is the full version of that drawing with the colors added. Um,
Ah,
I'm trying to have the light focusing on the characters, especially for this one, make the background a little darker and duller.
oh, I see.
Bring the attention right to the main characters, which is usually what you want for a book, especially a middle grade book cover.
Hmm. So how long does it take you normally to do a book cover, to create one?
Um, Usually about 3 months, and usually I'll have several projects going at once, so sometimes it will be longer than that overall. Um, but generally I allow about a month for the first sketching phase and a month for the pencil drawing phase and then a month for the painting phase. Um, and usually that's more time than I need, but I have other projects going on at the same time. And then also life happens. And so I want to build in some spare time. And if I end up taking too long on the painting phase, I can have a little bit of extra time.
Ah, okay. So, um, so that is your latest book cover, or are you working on something else at the same time?
Uh, this one, this one was the second latest. The most recent one that just came out, I don't have a physical copy of yet because
Ah,
it really did come out just 2 weeks ago. So
yeah, the fourth book. Okay.
yeah.
Do you think that readers are sometimes drawn to the books because of their covers?
Oh, definitely. Um, Otherwise my job wouldn't be important. I like to think that it is. Um, and I
Okay,
know we say that you
yes,
shouldn't judge a book by its cover, and I think sometimes that is true. There are definitely great books or great editions of great books that don't have the best covers. Um, but
that's for sure.
also the the job of the cover artist and especially of the art director is to know what visual language will speak to the audience that they're looking for. And so to be able to hire the illustrator who can make a cover that is the style they want, that will speak to those audiences, those readers who know what they're looking for. Um, and that's very important, I think. So definitely that's the whole job of the cover is to draw in, and you want to balance between being able to draw in new readers and draw in old readers who know exactly, like this cover tells them exactly what they're looking for, which is always a challenge. Uh, but that that visual language of knowing like which kind of covers say this is a middle grade fantasy adventure or this is a adult urban detective story is very important.
Hmm. And sometimes, how much do you want to give away of the book in the cover?
Yeah, that's also an important balance. You definitely want to give enough to give an idea of what the story is about and intrigue the reader, not give too much away. Uh, and that's something I have to work on, especially if I get a chance to read the whole manuscript and I'm like flipping through thinking of what I think will make a good cover. I have to pick something that is telling a part of the story, giving you some detail, not giving away the ending, even though the ending might be a very good cover, a very cool image that you would want to see. You don't want to put that on the cover.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what media do you prefer to use? What's your favorite media to use?
My favorite media is acrylic paints, but I actually mostly end up using digital painting in Photoshop um, because it is much quicker, much cleaner, easier to fix mistakes. Um, so most of the time, I will use that for my professional work and save the actual physical paint for when I'm working on something that doesn't have a deadline because I'm a very slow painter, especially when I'm working with traditional paint. And so I can't do too much. I can't give myself too severe of deadlines when I'm working on that. And I'd like to practice more and get faster at it, but maybe someday. Um, but it is really wonderful to work with physical paint and physically mix the colors, see the brushes and the texture on the canvas, and uh, it's such a nice feeling. So I do love working with acrylic paint when I can make myself do it.
One thing that we should have mentioned in the beginning, you were talking about things you're not being able to import a lot of books there. You should tell people where you are.
Yeah, so my family's currently living in Bogota, Colombia. Um, we just moved from the northeastern US for my husband's work, and we love it here. But yeah, I wasn't able to bring a ton of paintings or a ton of supplies with me. Um, so I don't have a lot of my old work here and a lot of books at the moment. Uh, so I'm slowly building back up my stock of supplies. And but that's another reason that digital is nice. I can take that anywhere. When I'm on vacation or visiting family or whatever, I can
Right.
bring my laptop and my tablet with me and do a little bit of work here and there. Um, so
Hmm.
that is another another good reason to use digital, but also I do miss the acrylic painting sometimes.
So how hard is it to get supplies in other
Uh,
places?
it's not too bad at all here. I mean, we're living in the biggest city, so it's pretty easy to get supplies. The brands are different than what I'm used to, but it's not too bad. Um, so yeah, I've been lucky so far and uh, been able to work okay. Would just have to like I can't always start a project as quickly as I'd like because I realize, oh, I don't have this thing that I'm used to just having several of in a drawer. I have to go out and buy it instead.
Right.
Plan more in ahead.
Okay. So what was the biggest challenge that you had in creating your latest cover?
Um, for the latest cover, it was probably the lighting. The the composition that we settled on is this particular one is this story is a travel back in time story, but also there's still magic involved. Um, so it's a Revolutionary War setting and a night scene with kind of like some torchlight in the foreground and then moonlight in the background and then magical light in the center and trying to balance out all the different light sources and still like have the picture read clearly was a fun challenge. But that's exactly the kind of challenge I like. I really like playing around with different light sources and different colors of light. So I had a great time with it. But it was tricky to in the rough draft phase, like make sure that the attention is focused in the right spot and that the lights and other spots aren't too bright. Uh,
That's for
so yeah, that was an
deliberers
adventure.
for. That's a deliverer's for.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wow. So, where do you get your inspiration for some of the work that is not with book covers?
Um, I think I probably said before, a lot of it is definitely still book inspired. Um, I love reading. I do a lot of reading. I also like watching movies and TV shows. Uh, so there's definitely classic fantasy, Lord of the Rings kind of things. Um, but yeah, a lot of even my personal work is inspired by my favorite books. Just ones where I wasn't actually hired to do the cover. So I do an imagined cover of what if I were hired to illustrate this book, what would I do? Um, or I like to do portraits of my favorite characters. Uh, I have a lot of fun with those. I've also done a lot of pieces inspired by role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, or similar things. Um, 'Cause I enjoy that a lot. I love the collaborative storytelling of that is so much fun, and the way characters grow over time through those games. And so I've done some character portraits inspired by that as well, either from my games or other people's games. And those are super fun to work on.
Hmm. Okay. Now, do you ever do any research for your artwork?
Yeah, definitely. For uh, for the Deliverers series, particular, some of them are historical settings, and so there's like specific Revolutionary War elements that I'm researching
Hmm.
to see, oh, what do the houses look like? What do the weapons look like? What do the uniforms of soldiers look like? So definitely details like that. Uh, I try to do enough research and get it as accurate as possible. I know I'm still making mistakes sometimes, but I definitely try and make an effort because I know as a reader, I know that like readers appreciate that a lot and will can really be nitpicky about the amount of detail of things they're really passionate about. So I try to be accurate where I can. Um, and for other fantasy related projects, a lot of times it's more just gathering a lot of inspiration where it doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but you want to have it grounded in a reality of like, oh, this person could really be wearing these clothes or could really be carrying this weapon or um, what about the environment that they're in influences what they're wearing or what they're doing. And I think that's always important for fantasy art, especially like you want it to be impressive and amazing and new and magical, but you want it to be grounded in reality so that the reader can still connect with it or the viewer of the artwork. So I think that's important.
Hmm. Okay. So, what else can we expect from you in the near future?
Um, let's see, I've got this painting in the works that will someday be finished physically and I'll be able to show it off. Um, and I have a couple other children's books projects in the works at the moment. Um, very focused on animals, actually. One is about a guinea pig and one is about dogs and horses, uh, which they're also fun illustrating challenges to do animals. I have some experience, especially with dogs and horses. I've done some books before, but horses are hard. They're hard to draw. Uh,
Yeah, I would
so I got to do a lot
imagine.
of research for that as well, get a lot of photo reference. Um, so yeah, I have several children's books coming out sometime this year, probably, from Brandy Lane Publishers, which is a great publishing house I've worked with a lot, and they do some really lovely children's books.
Hmm. Oh, wonderful. Okay. Now I have some questions for you about being an artist. What's your favorite part about being an artist? Um, just in general about being an artist. What do you love about being an artist?
Mhm. I think I think the thing that I love most about it is being able to tell stories visually. Um, because I love reading, I love watching movies, and but I can't personally tell stories in that way. Maybe if my life had taken a different path, I could be making movies right now, but I didn't feel as called to that. And I've always loved reading books. I tried to write books as a kid and a teenager, and it never worked well. Whereas the art, I felt like I could do. Uh, so I'm really happy to be able to tell stories through my paintings and contribute to books telling stories by doing the covers for the books. Um, and I just love that part of it. Being able to tell stories is a lot of fun.
Okay, great. And what about the publications? What's your favorite part about being an artist for publications?
Um, I
Is-
I think for me, honestly, I feel like I do a lot better when I have someone else's story to work off of. Um, and when I was a kid, a new artist, and I didn't feel like I don't know, I didn't feel like I had a driving passion of like, what work do I want to create, abstract art or something like that. I didn't really know what to do. When I found out, like, oh, of course, I could illustrate books and I can have other people's stories and to inspire me and work with them and collaborate on creating the art for books. That was a really good fit for me. And so I was very happy to be able to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So, what has been your favorite adventure during your career?
Um, I think some of my favorite adventures are going to conventions, especially BOSKONE and some other ones. But as I was thinking about this, one of my very favorite adventures was uh, as a sci-fi fantasy artist going to just like a Comic Con in my former hometown that I had since moved away from. But my sister, who is also an artist, and I met up and had a booth at this convention. And it was the first convention I had ever shown at and sold work at. And it was terrifying, but also so much fun. And we got to travel together, got to hang out together for the weekend. We got to explore the rest of the convention and uh, shop and just hang out with fans and some old friends. And that was just, it was a very new experience, but such a fun experience. And I've done several conventions since then, and each one is just so much fun. Get to talk to lots of people and meet other fans, and it's really wonderful.
Okay, it's great. Um, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned thus far during your career?
I think, and I mean, this is a lesson that I'm still learning all the time, and like it's just a really hard thing, but not to compare myself or at least my career to other people's. Um, which I think is like a lesson that everybody in their life has to learn many, many times over, probably, in
Mhm.
order to live a happy and healthy life. Um, because I went to school for illustration, which was a great experience, and got to see all my classmates and friends like moving in different directions, different career paths. Some people went more into animation, some people are illustrating comic books, some people are doing game art. Um, and I've been able to see some people that were in class with me getting really successful and becoming more and more famous, and that's wonderful. And I get to be like, I know them, but also it makes me feel really inadequate at times. And so I have to just step back and be like, I'm really proud of the work that I've done and am doing. And it doesn't matter if I don't become famous, although sometimes that feels like it would be really nice. Um, I'm I'm proud of the work I'm doing and that people like the work that I'm doing. And so that's fine. And I'm still growing and learning and hopefully getting better every day. So that's an important lesson and I'm still trying to remember it every day. And
I think that's
so
extremely
getting better and
important.
better.
Be proud of your work. I think that's really extremely important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's very hard to balance being proud of your work and also wanting to get better and better. Um, but
true.
that's life.
Yeah,
That's every career probably.
yeah, I think you're right. Wow, but that's very important though. Yeah. Um, okay. Do you have any other pieces of advice that you would like to you would like to give to other artists?
Um, I guess that's a big one where don't compare yourself to other people, just work
Hmm.
on your own path, get better and better, be patient with yourself. Um, I think uh, an important thing is to just consume a lot of art of many different kinds. It doesn't have to be, fantasy book covers, even if that's what you want to illustrate, but look at good art of all kinds, look at historical art and see what you can learn from that. Making copies of other people's paintings is a great way to learn. It's not cheating. It's a great way to learn art. Um, and just try a lot of different things, look at a lot of different things, and yeah, try a lot of different things and you don't have to be perfect at any of them yet.
Yet.
Yeah. Someday, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you would recommend to other artists that may have helped you in your career?
Yeah. The Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators is good. They have a lot of great resources. Um, and I still have yet to explore all of the things they have to offer. I've had membership for a while, but still haven't plumbed all the depths of the things they have. Um, and they also have great opportunities for connecting with other artists and or illustrators or writers or whatever, or both. Um, and uh, Also one of my favorite resources to recommend is muddycolors.com, which is a specifically fantasy painting site with many, many resources, articles and blog posts and videos on all kinds of elements of fantasy art and publishing. So they have some art directors write about what they're looking for. They have various artists talk about their processes and their favorite resources and make videos of advice and their process and things. And so for any fantasy artist or book artist, um, that's such a great resource.
Can
And I
you
always
spell that?
recommend that one.
Can you spell that?
Uh, yeah, muddycolors.com, muddycolors.com.
Okay, thank you. That's a good resource. All right. Next, I have questions about you as a person. What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
I think it might be how close my husband and I are to becoming historical reenactors. Uh,
Oh,
because we both love history and reading about it, and I love like handicrafts. I mean, I love art. I also love making things, other things, and so I love learning about old-fashioned like sewing techniques and uh, basket making and all kinds of different things. So I think there's like a 50% chance that when my husband and I don't have kids at home anymore, we will like work at Plymouth Plantation or someplace like that where we can uh, be historical reenactors and we would have so much fun.
do you do any costuming?
A very little bit. I, I mean, I love doing Halloween costumes every year. I don't do a ton other than that. But I have done some historical costuming and sewing techniques and learned a little bit about it, and I love it.
Okay. So, what is or are your passions? Now, I found out one of them
There's some, yeah.
when you're not writing, and how do you make time to do the things that you love?
Um, I definitely love making things with my hands besides like paintings and artwork. I do like sewing and making some clothes now and then and just making like little craft projects and decorative things with my kids and um, just little things to like. I love decorating for holidays. And so for me, a holiday doesn't count unless I make decoration for it and put it up in my house somewhere out of paper or wood or paint or whatever, all kinds of things. I also love reading, spend a lot of time reading, not as much as I did before I had kids. Have my free time is decreased, but and I also enjoy playing video games sometimes. And uh, what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, I like watching Korean dramas on Netflix once in a while. They're
Those
very
are
fun,
fun.
very
They are
creative.
fun. I've seen some of those. They're great. Okay. So, what does your studio space look like? And what do you need to have around you when you're doing your artwork?
So this is actually my studio space right here. This is my desk directly behind me. I just turned my chair around. Um, so
Okay.
it's actually just a corner of my bedroom, but we have enough space to make that work. And someday I aspire to live in a house where I have like my own room with big windows and nice light and enough space to make big paintings. But for now, this works pretty well. Um, And let's see, there's not too much that I have to have around me, uh, except I do have to have like noise in the background. I can't work in
Hmm.
silence. Um, so I'll have music or podcasts going on
What kind of
all the time
music?
while I'm working. I uh like mid 2000s uh emo rock, I think is the name for it, is my the stuff that I loved when I was in high school is still kind of my favorite. But I also like listening to musical soundtracks, and I listen to a lot of Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game based podcasts, which I like for being like kind of more long form, but not quite as long form as uh listening to audiobooks. For some reason, I love reading books, but I can't get into listening to audiobooks for some reason. I'm not sure why. My brain just isn't wired for it the right way, I guess.
Okay. And do you need to have any specific food or drink while you're working?
Not really. I don't drink coffee or tea or anything. I don't really do caffeine, so I usually just have a water bottle. And like I do definitely have snacks that come and go, but there's never any one thing. Um, I tried not to have too many crumbs that will get on my desk, although there definitely still are sometimes. So,
Okay. Now, artists and authors um, sometimes have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions to help them with their work. And do you have any? And do they help or hinder you? And it sounds like
um,
because you're in Colombia, I'm not sure.
yeah, I don't at the moment. I had my beloved cat Chloe, who died unexpectedly a couple years ago, but before she loved to sit on my desk and take up all the space. She was a big cat and overweight when we got her. So she would take up a lot of space on my desk, and just spread out. And so eventually I had like a large basket on one corner of the desk that she could lay in and contain there. But I actually, after she died, my husband had a friend make this for me, her in her basket. So now she still keeps me company on my desk, and I love it very much. This is one of my Christmas present that my husband got for me. So this is the
Oh,
only furry friend I have right now. Um, I hope to get other ones someday, but the international travel does make it difficult. So we're thinking about it, but not yet.
yeah, it would be difficult, I would imagine. Yeah. Okay. I have two more questions for you. Where can people find your work?
Yeah, so I have my own website. It's emilypritchettart.com, which I try to keep updated and show off a lot of things there. Um, and I'm also uh, to be found on Instagram and Facebook and Tumblr, uh, which I think those are all Emily Pritchett art as well. Um, and also try to post on there frequently, and I try to share a lot of background stuff of like these are the scribbly sketches that I'm working on, with mixed in with this is the nice painting, mixed in with uh this is the other artist's work that I'm looking at as inspiration for this. So I try to have a lot of fun with those.
Oh, okay. So those are actually how people can follow you. But
Yes.
people can find your books. We can
Oh yeah,
at
sure.
Annie's as Annie's we can probably get some of your books. If we can probably order some of your books at Annie's if you call us at 508-796-5613, or you can email us at orders at anniesbooksworcester.com. Okay. And where else can people find the books that you've done the covers for?
Um, I do have a lot of the links on my website, but also at Brandy Lane Publishers, which is one publishing house that I've worked a lot with. Um, the I think the Deliverer series can be found at thedeliverers.net, and that's the one I've been working on a lot of recently. Um, and also on just on Amazon. If you search my name there, you can find various projects. They all end up there eventually, so that might be the easiest place to find them.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions I have for you, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me
Yeah.
today. And
Thank you so much. This was lovely. It's so nice to talk to you.
nice to talk to you too. And hopefully we'll see you at Bosco next year.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. And good luck with your art,
Thank you very
Emily
much.
Emily Hurst Pritchett. Thank you.